Good afternoon. My name is Linda Quick, and I am the interim superintendent for the Frewsburg Central School District, and I will be here as the interim superintendent through the end of the 25-26 school year until a new superintendent is selected. I want to thank everybody today for joining us and looking at our budget presentation. Some of you may not have been able to make it to the budget hearing on May 7th that we're holding in the evening, but we did want you to have an opportunity to see the presentation and certainly get more information about what we are proposing to our voters for a vote on May 19th. It's also an opportunity for you, if you have questions, to reach out to the school district to try and get answers to those questions. Again, my name is Linda Quick, and I'm your interim superintendent. And Jerome, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Jerome Liao, and I am the school business manager here at Frewsburg Central.
So we're going to take you through a little bit of our presentation. And again, if there are questions, this is not a live session, but it's an opportunity for you to see the presentation and reach out with any questions, either by phone or email that you might have following. So again, this is the presentation that we are doing on May 7th at our public hearing that is being held at the Frewsburg Central Middle High School library. A little bit about us. You can see our mission statement at Frewsburg. I think it's how we anchor into all the work that we do. And it certainly is how we approach the budgeting process. Our goal is to provide exceptional academics, athletics, and extracurricular activities for our students. And this budget that we are presenting to the voters does that. We have had to make some tough decisions and some reductions in certain areas of our budget. But again, our purpose in presenting this budget to you is to ensure that our students have all of the opportunities that they currently have that we know that you appreciate. So a general overview of our operating funds, in particular our revenue for the 26-27 school year. This slide actually shows you what our proposed budget is for next year. We are proposing a budget of $24,291,748. What's important to note on this slide is the degree to which our budget revenues are supported by various sources. And the largest support for our budget comes from state aid. As you can see in the yellow portion of the chart, state aid accounts for 69% of the revenues that we receive each year to support our budget. That's a pretty significant amount. The other big area of support for our budget comes from local tax levy, which is 27% of the overall amount. Why I point this out as being important is when you receive as much state aid as we do from the state to support our general operating funds, we are very dependent on the amount that they give us, whether it's good or bad. How much to support our budgets really drives how much we have available to spend the following year. This year was an exceptionally tough year, as we're going to cover on the next slide, because if you can see on the slide under state aid, we are not receiving a significant amount of money this year for state aid. It's important to point out of the total amount that we're receiving of $470,000, only 1% or $110,000 is being given to Frewsburg for next year to support our general operating expenses. That is the bulk of our budget, about 70% of our budget. And that's all the programs and opportunities and extracurriculars that we are able to offer. The actual state aid that we get is more than that, but a large portion of that is for our debt service to support our capital projects. It's a totally different pot of money that we receive from the state, and it is a reimbursement for the debt service that we have on existing projects. But as far as actual operating expenses for next year, we're only receiving $110,000. You can see that we are proposing a 2% increase in our tax levy, which generates $127,000. So between those two pots of money, next year we're receiving $237,000 to support our general operating funds, our programs, our extracurriculars, all of our academics. For next year, in order to present a balanced budget, we also are recommending and have recommended to the board that we use another $100,000 of our fund balance. You can see that in the line item called fund balance, where this year we appropriated $780,000. Next year we are appropriating $880,000, an addition of $100,000. That is basically our savings account. And in order to not have to reduce programs or staff beyond what we currently are doing. We are looking at using $100,000 to offset the loss of revenue from the state that we ordinarily get. So you can see throughout that $100,000 is the other pot of money that we're using to support the budget increase. At the bottom, you can see the 25-26 final budget of $23,593,680 and the proposed budget of $24,291,748. That represents a difference of $698,000, which is on a percentage basis 2.96%. This slide shows our expenditures, and it breaks down our expenditures for the overall budget. You can see that the bulk of our expenditures in our budget are salaries and benefits, salaries for our teaching staff and our support staff, and the benefits that those staff receive. So that amounts to $15 million of our overall budget. Equipment, contractual expenses, supplies account for $6 million. Debt service is about $2.8 million, and then we have some interfund transfers for some miscellaneous items totaling $125,000. But the biggest portion of the budget is that bright blue salary and benefit portion. We are very heavy people-oriented business. The next slide gives you a breakdown of the various expenditure categories, and you can see a comparison of the current school year versus the next school year and how the breakdown of the budget is across the various areas. Starting with athletics, account for about $137,000 of our overall budget, but you can see the big line item is our salaries at $10 million and our benefits at just over $5 million. Like I said, it's a very big portion of the overall budget. As a matter of explanation, we mentioned earlier under revenues that we are projected to get a 1% increase in our foundation aid for next year, which does not amount to a lot of money. And it is a concern because in the past, we have typically received more money than the 1% that the state is proposing this year. As a matter of explanation, I would like to point out that many districts in New York State are in the same situation as Frewsburg and not getting much of additional money for next year. To give you a point of reference, this year we received 2% in foundation aid increase from the state, and next year it will drop to 1%. We are heavily dependent on state aid, and we're a relatively poor district compared to many districts in the state, so it impacts us more because we do not have a large tax levy that can offset the reductions in state aid that we're seeing this year. So it has caused us to have to look at our budget very carefully and make some changes and reductions. And you can see in the red, we have reduced in a number of areas to present a balanced budget because we can only ask the taxpayers to raise our tax levy by 2%. So we are very constrained about the amount of new money that we have available to us to apply to the budget. This is a breakdown of the overall, excuse me, too far. This is a three-part budget view. We have to submit to the state and explain our budget in three parts: administrative, program, and capital. And you can see the breakdown of this year's budget versus next year's broken down by those three areas. Administrative budget is reflecting a small decrease. The program budget and the capital budget are representing an increase. I do need to point out again that the capital budget is really entails our debt service for projects that the state approves. That is a reimbursement that we receive from the state, and it is outside of the general operating funds that we use to support our district each and every day. The budget summary, just to point out again, our proposed budget for next year, what that represents as an increase is $698,068 from this year's budget, or 2.96%. We are proposing a tax levy of 2% increase, which is our tax cap, and that will generate $127,397. Earlier, I did point out that we had to make some tough decisions this year in order to present you with a balanced budget to vote on. We did a number of different things. We pre-bought technology. We reduced our BOCES services that we purchase each and every year by approximately $100,000. We reduced materials and supplies across the board and really took a hard look at all of our budget line items and what we were purchasing to make sure that we were able to reduce a little bit in each of those line items. But at the end of the day, because we are so heavily staff oriented, we did have to make some reductions to our staff. And you can see here a summary of those reductions for next year. We were planning to have an assistant principal in the middle high school to support our principal. We will be reducing that position, so that's an administrative position that will not be in the budget. We are reducing a cleaner position. 2 special ed teachers will be reduced, and I put in there through attrition, which means they are retiring from the district or leaving the district for other reasons, and we will not be replacing them. So that's what that means when it says through attrition. Similarly, we're not replacing a secondary math teacher who is retiring from the district. We are reducing 3 teacher aides and a half-time secretary. The FTE that references in there is full-time equivalent, is what that means. It's basically 1 full-time equivalent or 1 full-time person when you see 1.0 FTE. Each of these positions also carried benefits, so we also see a corresponding reduction in benefits for each of these staff reductions. To point out a couple of the things that are in the budget, each year we do have a portion of our budget for capital outlay. That's $100,000, and we do receive aid back on that. And you can see the aid, that's a reimbursement that we receive back directly from the state for doing a capital outlay project. We've been doing capital outlay projects each and every year for many years. What this basically is a small project that the state allows us to do without having to go out by separate vote of our voters. And for this coming school year, we are proposing that we do abatement, repair, and replacing of our hallway flooring at the middle high school. We like you to see what the propositions are when you come to the vote, the night of the vote on May 19th. The first proposition is for the school budget, and it reflects the total amount of the proposed budget for next year of $24 million. It also includes the tax levy increase of 2%, which we covered earlier in the presentation. The second proposition that you're going to see is for a bus purchase, and each year we do have to upgrade buses. We have a rotation and a process for identifying which buses need to be replaced. For next year, we are proposing the replacement of 2 diesel-powered buses at an estimated cost of $400,000, and we do receive 90% of state aid back on those bus purchases. And the third proposition is for a capital reserve fund. If we want to set money aside for future capital projects to offset what we don't receive in state aid, we have to have a capital reserve fund for that, and we have to have a voter resolution to set up that capital reserve fund. So we are proposing, as part of this budget process, that we set up a new capital reserve fund, which we can each year decide how much money to put into that fund. And lastly, candidates for Board of Education. We do have 3 seats open for Board of Education. 2 of the seats that are open are 3-year terms. 1 of the seats that is open is a 1-year term. Right now we have 2 candidates running for election, John Eric Wright and Jason Roman. They have already submitted their petitions. We have no other petitions at this point in time. So we will be seeking that third person either through write-in or through board appointment. So our upcoming vote, election of board members, is scheduled for May 19th. I'll give you some details on that in a minute, but this is the list of the voter qualifications and who can vote. You're qualified to vote if you are a citizen of the United States, you're 18 years old or older, and you are a resident of the district for at least 30 days prior to the vote. Absentee ballots are available by calling the superintendent's office or by calling 716-569-7041. You do not have to be a registered voter to vote in a school district election in Frewsburg. And as a reminder, our annual vote is May 19th, 2026 from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the high school gymnasium lobby, and that is in the new gym. We hope to see you on that day to join us in our vote. And if anybody has any questions, here's our contact information. We encourage you to reach out and ask us questions either via email or phone, and we would be glad to take the time to talk to you about any of the issues that you might have. Jerome, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, you covered it all.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great day.